Yes, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 208. Yep, we're getting up there. Just making sure video and audio work. It's been a while since I sat at this desk. Well, it's been a week because we did our show last Monday, but we changed some of the settings over the last few days because Gary Robbins was here, sitting right where Kim is sitting, and he and I recorded a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff for Where Dreams Go to Die. I'm very excited to release that, but some of the settings did change. So just confirm with us in the chat room here if the video, audio all sound good. Should be. Everything looked and sounded okay during the test, but as always, the internet, YouTube, everything tends to be a little finicky.
Chris Brown says, yep, working great here.
Awesome. Fantastic. For those of you who are new to the show, my name is Ethan, the Ginger Runner. I am joined also by
Kim Tashima Newberry, and I will be manning the chat room tonight.
Yes. We are, of course, live. You might be watching the archive version of this, but we do go live every Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and tonight is no exception. And our guest tonight, I'm excited to have this guy back on.
You've been talking about it nonstop.
Nonstop. Well, we've been driving all day. I'm definitely road wired, so that's why I feel like I'm caffeinated because we've been driving for the last 6.5 hours. But all day I've been talking about our guest tonight, Chris Mocko, having him back on the show. It's been almost exactly a year since he's been on air. And he's done a lot in the last 365 plus days. So to have Chris Mocko on the show again tonight is going to be great. We're going to talk to him all about his season last year, going into the season this year of running. And very recently, he does vlogs quite often. The intro titles of which I'm happily the creator of. Every time I watch one of his episodes, it makes me laugh. But the Chris Mocko show are the videos that he creates. And he recently came out to mention that he has an eating disorder. And we're going to talk to him about that and what it took for him to actually announce that on his channel, how it's affected him over the years. So tonight should be a really interesting episode, and hopefully will help a lot of people.
Yes.
So tonight, Chris Mocko will be joining us. Sit back, relax, get ready, everybody. Very excited to be back here in the booth for another Ginger Runner Live. You guys ready? Here we go. Ginger Runner. Yes, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 208. We're getting up there. Our guest tonight, I'm very excited to have him back on the show. As I just mentioned in the pre-show, it's been just under a year since he's last been on the show. He's a wonderful human being, really, really funny. I love his energy. He and I are like every time we see each other, which is not often. He came to one of our Where Dreams Go to Die screenings in Denver, but it was almost like no time had passed. He's one of those kind of friends where you see him after a long period and it's like, dude, and you're instantly caught up. That's all it takes. It's just saying, dude. That's pretty much it. But Chris Mocko will be joining us on the show tonight. We're going to talk all about his season last year, going into the 2018 running season, the ups, the downs, and over on his YouTube channel, on his vlog, the Chris Mocko Show, he recently announced that he is dealing with an eating disorder. We're going to talk to him what it's like to, at an elite level, deal with something like that, come out publicly to his audience with something like that, and how he's dealing with it, but also how maybe it can help other people that might be suffering from something very similar. So I'm very excited to have him on the show tonight, talk to him all about that. It should be a really interesting, fun show.
Yeah.
Of course, Chris is always a great guest. I'm not the only host of the show.
Oh. Hi, guys. I'm Kim Tashima Newberry, and I'll be in the chat room. We are live, as we've mentioned. If you guys have questions for our wonderful guest, Chris, please pop them in the chat room. We'll be pulling them throughout the show.
Yep. What's going on in the live chat room
There
right
are
now?
a lot of hardcore Mocko fans in the chat room, just like dying to get his face on camera.
Well, we're going to have to make him wait just a little bit longer. We don't want Mocko's ego to be as big as mine. Let's take a step back here. We are all big Chris Mocko fans here. Just a wonderful guy, great personality, and we'll show him on camera here in just a second. Of course, before we get really into the show, we have a couple people that we love to thank week after week. They help make this show happen. They are our top tier Patreon supporters. Month after month, they are at the top level. They're in the chat room often during live shows. You get to interact with them. They are just wonderful human beings. So big shout out to Chris Lee from Hong Kong. Chris and his organization, Trailblazer, over there, do some incredible things. They recently screened Where Dreams Go to Die, raised over $10,000 for charity. Got to see all the pictures. Those are on the Patreon Crew Facebook page. Really, really cool event. They even had a Gary lookalike, unbeknownst to anybody. A guy showed up that looked just like Gary Rupp. Like,
that was pretty crazy.
It was crazy in Hong Kong, of all places. Another big shout out to Rick Bjarnason of cheekymonkeymedia.ca. He and his team there, they create websites and do incredible things in the website realm. They are currently rebuilding and redesigning the gingerrunner.com website because that thing has needed some major help. I designed it a couple years ago, and I'm not great at coding, as you can tell if you go there now. I think it's broken. But Rick is an ultra runner himself, training currently for Sinister 7 and Fat Dog 120. Really difficult, hard races, but Rick's been a big supporter. He and his team there, just helping out the community, helping out us, creating this website, and it's been pretty awesome. And finally, Brian Sands, who's been a longtime supporter of the show and is most likely in the chat room tonight. He is there. Big shout out to Brian. He ran his first marathon last year in October. He's training for his first 50K. He's already teased like he's already thinking beyond that. I'm like, man, this is awesome. He's super inspiring. Has lost over 100 pounds over his journey. And just keeps rocking. Absolute solid guy, good friend. So big shout out to Brian Sands as well. So thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. We could not do this show without you. So we begin.
I think we shall. And we also have a self-proclaimed hardest chorist Mocko fan in the chat room, Mr. David Roach.
David Roach, the biggest Mocko fan of them all. I don't know. I'm a big Mocko fan.
You guys can fight it out later.
Okay, I do love me some Mocko. So, without further ado, welcome to the show after too long, just way too long of a hiatus, the one, the only, Chris Mocko.
Yay!
How are you, man?
Good. I'm a little stressed out and disappointed. I had like 8 different intros that I wanted to drop on you. And I got too tense when you dropped that Roach thing, the Roach line at the end. I got too nervous and I got sweaty, and you know, I told you I was gonna look off camera and close one eye the whole time, but that wasn't gonna work. And then I was gonna make a plunger joke, but it all fell. So
yeah, unbeknownst.
Yeah, I get this once a year. I get a chance to get introed on the Ginger Runner, and I blew it again. But hello, Ethan and Kim. Sorry, we're here. We're here.
One of our favorite things about Chris Mocko is that I could literally just cut the camera to him, and he'd be able to take over the show. Chris, to you.
Okay. How much time do I have? Just tell me cut me off.
Nailing it already. You have 45 minutes, and we can go into the post show.
Okay, perfect.
Regardless, it's awesome to have you on, man. Seriously, it's been too long. I feel like we just need to have the Chris Mocko show, or the Chris Mocko on the Chris. Oh my God, now I'm getting confused. Have the Chris Mocko on the Ginger Runner live every Monday. How does that sound?
Hey, I would be open for it. I do. When you reached out, I was like, you know, this is number 2. When folks host SNL 5 times, they get like a classy robe and they get the big presentation, like Steve Martin comes out. So if we make it to 5, 1, I want a robe, and 2, you better get Steve Martin or at least Alec Baldwin. So those are my 2 requirements. Talk to my agent if you're not gonna be able to do that.
I actually like the idea because we've only had a few guests who have been on multiple times. We've had guests make us like a return episode. Tonight is your return. I think there's very few who have done 5 or more episodes, but I like the idea of having like a jacket, like a green jacket, like the Masters or something that they can wear.
Where's my jacket?
You graduated from the cooler. That's pretty
true.
Great. For the longest time, the show took place in what seemed like a dungeon, and Kim and I had to sit on a cooler. But we got Kim a chair.
We have chairs. All right.
Yeah. It's been too long. So catch us up, Chris. What happened last year? So last time we had you on the show, there's a lot of Western States prep. There's a lot of talk, stuff like that. You ran a lot last year. Can we kind of do a little walkthrough of what happened last year with running and stuff?
Yeah. And I also forgot to point out during your intro, I was kind of wandering off in my own thoughts, and then I heard Chris Mocko recently came out, and I was like, what is this episode about? And I was like, do I need to get my parents on the line? But it was about feeding stuff. So, okay. Caught me off guard a little bit. But,
it's okay. Do we need to bring Amelia Boone on? Do we need to?
I assume I could ask her if she wants to come in. You good? Okay.
I wouldn't doubt. She's actually. Kim, let us know when she jumps into the chat room because I feel like she's hilarious as well. Okay, sorry, Chris. Keep going. Talking about running last year.
Yeah. So I think we caught up definitely after Lake Sonoma, because I saw Kim on the trails. I saw you at the turnaround point.
Yep.
Dusted Kim at Lake Sonoma. So but, I was too nervous. I was too nervous to try to repeat that, so I didn't make an appearance this year. But I think we were about a month away from Western States. I was feeling extremely confident. Training was going very well. I was self-coaching, which was probably dangerous, but I had decided to make a big gamble and was going huge miles, huge training weeks. And, I think I was averaging about 130 miles a week. I had a couple weeks in the 150s. And so just monster amount of training and significantly higher than anything I'd done in the past and since. And I went into Western States feeling extremely fit, extremely confident, and was just really excited to race. And there was a couple of hiccups in the build up to it, and we'll probably talk more about this in general, but it is really hard to pick a race 6 months, 9 months, even 12 months. I knew 12 months out I was going to do this and be perfectly tapered, prepared mentally for that day. And it's a challenge that I still have not figured out. I think every single time I build for something, it's the race before the big finish that usually goes the best because there's not as much pressure. You're still kind of training through it. And I think the same thing was true with States, although I felt great from the gun. Then we dealt with that 10, 15 miles of snow, which really kind of discouraged a lot of the runners.
It was nasty last year. Yeah.
They decided to turn up the heat in the canyons, and things were still going pretty well, and I was moving up in the field. And then around mile 60, my body just went and shut off, and I have no idea what happened, but I could not run another step after that, and had a lot of moments where I wanted to drop out of the race. My pacers were extremely encouraging, got me to the finish line somehow, but I'm pretty sure the first 65 miles and the last 35 miles took the exact same amount of time. It's like,
wow,
maybe even more. It was probably 11 hours to Forest Hill and then almost 13 to get to the finish. So it was a long day and a lot more time on my feet than I expected. But I actually think the experience itself was more powerful for me and emotional for me than the previous year when things went pretty well and I finished in the top 10 and I competed well and kind of exceeded expectations. Like,
sure.
I should have left extremely disappointed because I thought I had potential to be podium, and when I heard that things weren't going well for Jim, that opened up many more doors. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to capitalize on that, but just getting across the finish line. And I know you've had Casey on recently, and there are a couple others of us who had very bad days, but made it to the finish. And like, we have identical photos of us just like in our palms, just crying at the river, and just like, I don't want to do this. Like, at that point, we had 22 miles left, and it's just like, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long afternoon, folks. And the fact that there's so many other people involved, I had friends out there who were waiting at, mile marks, waiting for me to pass, and they had to go to sleep because I didn't show up. It was just kind of a debacle of a day, but made for a better story in the end. So at least we had that. And I during that time as well, I signed with Nike. So that was a pretty major milestone for me and extremely validating for everything that I had done in the months leading up to that. But then almost immediately after that, I kind of had my 2 weeks of recovery. What the heck is going on? I need to let my body reset, and decided over the 4th of July, I was like, okay, I'm doubling down. I was signed up for UTMB. We're going to do UTMB. I got an invite to go to Colorado, and for some reason I thought it would be a good idea. Like, oh, if I'm going to be in Colorado for 3 weeks, I might as well sign up for Leadville. So I went from like,
classic, like, I'm going to be in Colorado at the same time the Leadville Trail Race 100 is. Let's have some fun.
And I don't know what I was thinking. I clearly was, I'm like, if there's any reason to have a coach, it is to help you decide on a race plan and not validate horrible decisions like that. And
Right.
A month passed where I was just a build up, and it's happened again and again where I build up all this pressure because this race is coming up and I'm not nearly fit enough to go for it, especially UTMB, which doesn't just require fitness, but also learning how to use poles, like super mountainous terrain. And I was just completely underprepared. And I had like a breakdown at a friend's wedding back in Kentucky and was just like, I can't do this. I'm not prepared. And that weekend dropped out of UTMB, dropped out of the entire training plan that I had for Colorado, dropped out of Leadville.
Yeah.
And it's a hard decision because at that point, not only was I invested in it, sponsors thought I was doing it, I'd also forked up a lot of money. So it was the first time that I had a travel budget with Nike. And so I was like, oh, this is maybe my only travel for the year. So I'm going to get a first class ticket to Europe and really enjoy it. And now I'm sit with this like $5,000 voucher that I need to start spending before the end of next year. So it's crazy how much these like sunk costs of the financial burden of the Airbnb and the flight and the race registration can add up and make you end up making the poor decision simply because you're like, oh, I just put all this money down. I got to follow through and execute. And so failed on UTMB, all those races. I had a lot more time to think than I ever had before. So Western States the previous year, I took time off from running, but I had a full-time job. So I had something to keep me busy. And this time around, I did not have a lot going on. So I was living in the basement in Marin. I had Ridley the dog to take on walks, but outside of that, there was not much to do. Yeah. And so I was just struggling with like, what the heck am I doing here? I need some change in my life. And instead of trying to do a micro change, I did a massive change. And was like, okay, we're going to pack up my Kia and drive out to Colorado. And I've been to Boulder one time in my life, but I feel like it's going to be a good fit. And we're just going to roll the dice and hope that it works out. Yeah. And so I ended up driving out to Colorado in September. Soon after that, got a full-time job at Twitter. So funny, I was working for the same CEO in San Francisco, working next door to the Twitter building, but really the move was Boulder first and then find a job. And I just have absolutely loved the culture in the office here. And I think in general, the work-life balance and just the appreciation folks have for the outdoors is just very different here in Boulder than it was in San Francisco. And it just doesn't feel nearly as tense and techy as the San Francisco experience. And people are there to like support each other instead of being political, bashing each other. It's much more, I'm trying to think of an HBO analogy. It's much less Game of Thrones, climbing a ladder. Much more
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Curb Your, sure.
I was gonna say Sex in the City, but I.
Good one, Kim.
Like HBO, Sex in the City.
Yeah, much.
That's the one I know.
Much more. Carrie.
Yeah.
Is that
less Miranda.
Less Miranda. More Carrie.
More Samantha.
Samantha.
I know very little about Sex and the City, but yes, we do have Chardonnay at lunch every day and gossip about all the men in the office.
That's the Boulder that we know. If I know Boulder, and I do, it's Chardonnay at lunch and Cosmos at dinner.
Right.
I want to remind everyone that, of course, we are live with Chris Mocko, just catching up over the last year of his journey, both with running and life. Let's get to some of these live questions. Kim, you already pulled a bunch aside here.
Yeah, there's a question from Nathaniel in the chat room. Nathaniel asked, Chris, with race results coupled with sponsorships, would you classify 2017 as a positive year overall or no?
Ooh. I would classify it as an extremely positive year because I took my momentum from racing and the budding YouTube channel, signed with Nike, and then immediately blew up and didn't have any more results. So I timed it perfectly. Not if I did any better. But no, I had so many life changes in 2017. Quit a job, found a new job, moved 3 times. So many things happened that regardless of how the racing went, it was an amazing experience. And I have absolutely no regrets about what happened, and it would have to qualify as a success because right now I know that I'm maybe not I was definitely happy at this time last year, but I'm much happier on the average in the last 6 months in Boulder than I had been in the previous 5 years in San Francisco. So definitely made the right move and part of me is wondering why it took this long. But glad I'm here now.
I mean, we talk a lot about it on the show, just the work-life balance, the run balance, everything like that, but also finding an environment that makes you happy. And sometimes that takes a couple shots. I lived in Los Angeles for 10 years, and the first bit was great. Like the first 6-7 years, I was like, this is it. This is where I'm going to live for the rest of my life. But it took a couple years to kind of figure out that this, where I live now in Seattle, is where I needed to be for happiness. And it's cool to see. I mean, we get to follow along with your journey on the outside. So we're much more spectators. I can only imagine how fun, but also confusing and scattered it can be to pick up and move and have to, do a job and then live freelance and then job. But following and talking to you just a little bit, I like Boulder seems like a great fit. It feels like you're having fun at the company you're at. You're running when you want to run. It seems like things are actually really good since you've changed location. It seems like Boulder has just been a really great choice.
Absolutely. Across the board, would 2 thumbs up, big 2 thumbs up about Boulder in general. Yeah, again, it was scary because I only knew 2 people when I got here, Ryan and Kat. So who maybe have been on the show. Kat maybe been on
Kat
the show.
For sure. Yeah.
She might have won Western States, pretty big race last year. I don't know if you.
She's done good things.
The audience has done pretty well. So they were the only 2 people I really knew when I moved out here, and it was pretty scary to be like, I am leaving all of my friends, all of my college friends, this very safe environment and trying something completely new. And it was very scary. And I've just been very fortunate. We happen to be a part of a really awesome community, and it's so transferable to almost any city, especially the ones with a lot of trail access. And so the opportunity to meet people is just like instantly. It was just like, meet one person, introduce to 5 more, go to a barbecue. And it was just a really amazing community here. And unfortunately, tonight I was supposed to pop my cherry for there's a Monday night run up Green Mountain. And I promised some guys I was going to be there today. And then I got the message from you, and it was like, you have a date with a cute girl, and then the really pretty girl texts you. And like, I feel some obligation to the original commitment, but you can't pass the Ginger Runner. So
I mean, let me just say this to your friends who are running up Green Mountain right now. I'm so sorry to take Mocko from you. He's mine tonight, but he will join you perhaps the next round. Maybe. Unless we get him back on the show, because I think he's got a Monday commitment now. Every Monday.
Every Monday, yeah.
So you're basically working full time. You live in Boulder. When did the running bug catch you again, and how have you been able to fit it into your new schedule? Because this is a different schedule than what you were working with last year. As far as when you're a freelancer, you're running full time. Yeah. It's one thing to go out for a training run in the middle of the day, but now you have to change everything back to the way it was. So how's that been?
Yeah, well, it was a bit of up and down. So I think I hit the worst of my fitness in probably my entire adult life right before I got to Boulder. And part of me was just like excited to be in a car for 2 days and away from any distractions. And we'll segue into our later conversation today. But yeah, I was out of shape. I was overweight. I was completely unmotivated to do any sort of training. And getting to Boulder, unfortunately, it meant adjusting to altitude, but it also meant just exposure to entirely new stimulus, brand new trails. And so that was very exciting. And
yeah.
I didn't start work until mid-October. So I had about 6 weeks to really just prioritize my health and training. And I actually got into pretty good fitness really quickly, ran a couple of local races, started getting excited about TNF. And then as soon as work started, things started going downhill. And I just my routine had been wake up, have breakfast, have some coffee, drink some more coffee, go for a run, take a nap, maybe go for another run, go to bed early. And then all of a sudden I was introducing this thing that was going to take 9 to 10 hours a day. I had to iron clothes again and wear button-down shirts, like button shirts again. And it was just a lot of new for me, and I did not adjust well to that. And part of it was also I wanted to prioritize this. I'm starting a new job. I can't be like, hey, I'm going to leave at 3 and go for a run. And so it quickly took the back seat. And unfortunately, I was already signed up for TNF. I actually wanted to see my friends in California, so I still went out, even though I went into that just completely underprepared.
Right.
And so finishing was a big surprise, and I was very excited about doing that. But very soon after that, I thought about Western States, and I was like, I need to get back to Western States. I don't have a top 10 finish. I need a golden ticket. I think I was already signed up for both Bandera and Sean O'Brien at the time.
Right.
The plan was, I'll get it at Bandera, no problem, and then Sean O'Brien will just be icing on the cake, another opportunity to be in a competitive field. And the first thing that I needed to do was change something about what was going on right now, because I was just not hitting workouts or any sort of consistency. So I reached out to my good friend and super fan, Mr. David Roach, and I was like, hey, I could use some help. Please take me back. I was crying in the rain. So we had stopped working together almost a year prior to that, when I had decided to leave my job and do the running thing full time, simply because I knew that there was no way he or any coach was going to endorse the sort of crazy training and racing I was going to do.
Right.
And I didn't want him to feel any sort of guilt about like the injuries or the burnout or everything that actually came to fruition. But
yeah,
I was ready to take it seriously. I needed the guidance from somebody who knew what was going on, and we started working together. And the first couple of weeks went really well, but I think we might have been, there was two things going on. It was cramming for a race that was only a month out, and he was putting together some really tough workouts, but we had 5 weeks to get in shape for 100K with no base. And that was scary. And I think I had a bit of a freak out over the holidays. It turns out training for a race that's a week after the like worst week of training in the year is like never a good idea. And not only it's like the Christmas food plus the family stresses and everything else that's going on there. It's just not a good environment for training.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, Bandera is January 6th. So it's like fresh after the holiday when cookies and pie are just prevalent.
Yeah. And at the same time, I think maybe rushing into it a little too fast, I developed some hip issues that had been lingering for a while. And I went into the race not super confident. I ended up dropping out, which I don't think I've ever done in a trail race, but it was way too painful. And part of it was probably me talking myself out of it. The goal for the race was to get a golden ticket, and that was not happening. And I think similar, definitely not the same level, but similar to the way some of the athletes treated Boston, where things weren't going their way, they decided to shut it down instead of force themselves into a finished result that wouldn't get them in the prize money and wouldn't give them a good time. I was like, okay, I have Sean O'Brien in a month. That's going to be my next shot. I got to give myself an opportunity to do that. But again, went back to training. David was super supportive. He actually like took me out on runs to make sure I went for runs. So he met me for runs. He was in Boulder for a period of time. And so had some really positive runs with him where I was like, I'm really excited. I'm ready to do this again. But again, it was only a month. And when you have 4 weeks left, you're like, oh, that's so much time. I'm easily going to get there. And then all of a sudden it's 3 weeks and 2 weeks, and you miss a workout or you miss a long run. And then all of a sudden it's race day. And Sean O'Brien, again, for the third straight race, I was like, I'm underprepared. I'm not confident. Not even looking forward to this. This is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
And so
Sufferfest.
Whether it was my actual fitness at the time or just my horrible mental attitude, I was probably 5 miles into the run and already quit on the day. And just, I think I was crying. The first time I saw my crew, I was bawling, just like, this is awful. I want to drop out. And somehow we willed ourselves to the finish, which was not easy. Going down the Bulldog is the big
Bulldog, yeah.
Time. Yeah, it was hot. It was miserable. I was getting passed by all sorts of people. Courtney Dualter. I'm terrible pronouncing her last name, but she blew past me at mile 10, and she's known for being a pretty mean person, and she was cursing me. F you, Mocko! I hate you. You're the worst runner.
That sounds just like her.
Just like Courtney. You can quote me on that. She's nothing. I had no issues with her passing me, and she's a great person. I was actually incredibly impressed with the way she ran. And if anyone's betting on Western States, I don't know how you don't put money on her, but then you see the rest of the women's field, and you're like, well, there's 8 other women who could win this race. So
yeah.
I don't know if the answer is there, but she is an absolutely wonderful runner to watch and an amazing person. I got to know her a little bit at that at your filming. And so it was fun to see her race. It was kind of fun to be in the mix and not being super competitive and actually see how the race unfolded. And I could see people suffering and like the person in second place hanging on for the golden ticket. I was like, I am so glad I'm not in your position. But amazing crew that day got me to the finish line. And so Kirk, Chris, Eric, I don't think they're listening, but they were amazing that day. They got me to the finish. And I think that made a difference. As little of an importance I placed on it that day, I think finishing that race was the first stepping stone to get me in the right direction. But we really took a reset there talking to David and decided, okay, Lake Sonoma is 2 months from now. That's going to be my last chance at Western States. I care so much about Western States. I have my 2 buckles on the mirror by my dresser, and I look at those every day, and it was like, that's my motivation. And I was just like, I can't have another one of these races, and I can't force it. And so we're going to clear the racing schedule and only begin racing when I'm feeling ready to race. And fortunately, there's so many local races here that it's pretty easy to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that now it probably took a month before I even started getting focused, and actually took a break from David where I was like, hey man, I'm in a bad state here. Things are not going well. I just need some time away from training and just try to find the joy again. And one Sunday I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to reach out. And that Monday we got back into training, and it's been night and day. And I wish I knew exactly what flipped it and got me to refocus. I have memories in college of one conversation with my coach where he was like, hey man, you can either take this seriously or you can goof off and do what you're doing. And that was all I needed to get refocused. And I think this time it had to come from me more than from someone else speaking it to me. But the way that David has structured my training since then has been a massive difference in how we approached it before, but it is exactly what I needed to get back to a consistency. So now we're 6 straight weeks with 90 miles. We've had some really good long runs. I'm enjoying it. And it's just like a level of consistency I haven't had forever. Like waking up and running has not been a chore for 6 months. And it just feels so amazing that I'm back in that place.
That's great, man. Like someone at your level, at the elite level, sponsored level, that sort of thing, you live a lot of your life in the public eye. People want to follow your training. They want to follow your racing results. And so I can imagine it's really easy to kind of fall into that trend of, well, I got to race this next race, or I didn't perform as well as I wanted to here, so I got to find the next thing. I think it's refreshing to hear you literally learning it in real time here. That maybe taking a break from the racing is what you needed. And sure enough, you're talking about being reignited. That flame is coming back and you're able to get out there and enjoy the runs again. As someone who spent a year fighting those same like demons, it's nice to go out and run and enjoy it and enjoy every mile. Even the bad days are still good. So this is really awesome to hear. Again, I want to remind everyone we are live and we have tons of questions. Kim's been pulling a lot aside. She's been tapping me like, come on, let's ask questions. I'm like, yes, let's get to it. What do we got?
Can we ask them? Can we ask the group if this is too much or too little zipper? Should this be adjusted at some point?
I wish we could like put a poll up.
That's got to be a feature that we got to be able to figure out in the future. People can interact with Chris's chest here. Click on where you want his zipper to be. Don't
here
because it would actually pause the video. I mean, our audience always wants more skin. But I don't think it's from you. It's from me, Chris.
And that's why I'm wearing
as long a sleeve as
that's
possible.
why this is the skin I'm showing. And that's what you're showing.
This is my skin. This is me getting sunburn. I had sunscreen on my neck and my arms. And on Run Steep Get High logo. That's pretty much it. But yes, we do have questions. Sorry, Kim.
Yeah, there's a question from Randy in the chat room. Randy asks, is there pressure from sponsors to have you run specific races or to run a certain number of races?
I don't know if there's pressure from the sponsors. There's definitely an expectation. But I've been amazed with Nike support. So they came to TNF. They showed up at Sean O'Brien, and they absolutely did not have to. I was very clear up front to them that I was not in any sort of position to do well at these races, but they were still there to support crew, get me to the race. And even now, I mean, I do feel some pressure because, you know, they've signed me as an athlete. I feel like I should be representing their brand. I found that there's probably other ways to do that. And that, you know, there's clauses in my contract that say I should be running certain races at certain times of the year. But I feel like at the end of the day, I have such an open relationship with them that whether it's my contributions through returning to YouTube or just doing local races, that's going to be more important than like, okay, you didn't do X, Y, and Z, you're getting a reduction and we're cutting you. No more, you know, fancy Nike shoes and your Jordans. You can't get any more Jordans. We're cutting you off from Jordans. So
You get Jordans?
I have unlimited access to the newest Jordans. So unfortunately, they don't do so well on the trails. But yeah, I have felt pressure to perform for them, and particularly I think being as open as I was with the YouTube channel and talking, and you know, I had some videos that may have been a bit more. They could have been misinterpreted if you didn't know my character well,
yeah.
And you know, I think being able to back that up with performances is very important, and I haven't been able to do that for a very long time, and that's almost embarrassing to me. But I think Nike in particular has been extremely patient, and I think their investment is going to pay off because the time is coming when the Mocko stock has taken its dip and it is climbing back up, and we're like Bitcoin circa September 2017. We're about to, like, you know, 200x their investment. So I think they're going to be pretty excited with what comes later.
Damn, I didn't think that we'd have a Mocko crypto, but I'd buy some of that.
I feel like I'm slowly losing my job because you're going to trade me for Mocko, who's talking about cryptocurrency and at the potential of you getting Jordans. The way you looked at
Kim,
me
this
when
has been
you're
great,
like,
but,
you get
Chris,
Jordan.
Let's get to some more questions. Oh, by the way, the audience is really liking
There's a lot of conversation about the zipper.
Every time we have Mocko on, which has been once, the conversation in the chat room definitely starts to taper into a different realm. We're talking Tom Selleck conversations going on. People think that your zipper needs to go down to the navel. A lot of gentlemen in the chat room, just big Chris Mocko fans.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's all coming from men in the chat room. I do get that.
Let's get to some of those questions. Sorry.
Yeah, a question from Brad Clark in the chat room. Brad says, Chris, you talked about how aggressive your training schedule was both by yourself and then with David leading up to Bandera. How and why has the intensity changed in the last 6 weeks?
Yeah, well, the training I did last year, I think, was only possible because I was doing it full time. I did not have a job in the middle of the day. I was able to rest, recover, do all the little things that I needed to do. And it turns out I didn't actually enjoy it all that much. A lot of this, at a certain point, about a month in, every run became a little bit more challenging. I'd procrastinate a little bit longer. And I don't think I diagnosed it at the time, but I was definitely losing excitement for the sport where I felt I had to chase this mileage number every single week, that I had to have some accomplishments on Strava in order for that week to be worthwhile. And I'm grateful that I've stepped away from that. And I would rephrase what I said earlier about the aggressive training with David earlier in December. The mileage was not high. I think the intensity was quite a bit higher than I had previously done. So there was a lot of speed work, trying to re-engage some of the muscles and stride that I hadn't activated for the months in the past, because for the 9 months prior, I was doing all this very slow, long miles, and I hadn't done a lot of the speed work that is equally important to training. But I think David approached it, and he can comment better than me, but he wanted to make sure that I could check the box each day for each workout. And so doing that required bringing back the mileage. I mean, his workouts in general are very approachable. There's never a pace goal. It's always go off of effort. And I've tried to do a better job of, even for the workouts where I generally think about pace a lot more, especially because I'm at altitude, I don't even really know what pace means. I'm not looking at my watch. I look at the time, make sure that I hit the time right, but I look at the pace after the workout, and that's kind of fun as a kind of exciting way to end it. But if it's slow, it's not bothering me. And today is a perfect example. All morning I was thinking about running a second time today. I was going to go up Green Mountain. I was going to do something local here, but instead of doing that, I did 20 minutes of stretching and rolling, and then spent 20 minutes in my pool. and hot tub instead. And I think that's probably way better for my body than trying to force through a run. I'll have more energy for my run tomorrow morning. I'll probably get to bed earlier. Just a lot of small things where before I would have forced that second run because I need that mileage up. I don't even look at I don't look at my number until I get to Sunday and the week is over, and I can kind of look back at the week. I'm just trusting whatever David is saying each and every day.
I love it. I wanted to kind of transition the conversation into something that you've been talking about openly now for, I guess, over the weekend, because you posted the first video. You had a follow up, I think yesterday, but you had a video last week talking about your dealing with an eating disorder. I'm fascinated by this because as someone who also has issues with food, I've had issues with food my entire life. In varying capacities. It's something that like hits close to home, and I know I am not, and you are not, the only human out there who is dealing with some sort of either food issues or eating disorders or anything in any sport. I think it affects our sport at all levels, front of the pack to back of the pack, and a lot of running sports specifically. I was even talking a couple weeks ago about the people in high school and college and it affecting them at that level, trying to keep a certain weight and coaches telling them that they have to lose weight to reach a certain speed and that sort of thing. Can you give us a little bit of background on just how you've been dealing with this and what made you decide to talk about it publicly?
Yeah, absolutely. I was worried. We've been talking so much about the past and goofing around that we wouldn't get to the meaty stuff. So yeah, we'll transition. I mean, it was pretty surprising for me to even consider talking about it. A lot of the content that I've had on the YouTube channel has been very light, goofy content, and this was a completely different direction. Mm-hmm. And so I'll talk about the things leading up to it and then how I ended up making the decision. But honestly, I never thought about this in high school. I was on a competitive high school team. Nobody ever talked about it. It wasn't a problem. All the women were healthy. All the men were healthy. And we really enjoyed and loved the sport for the purity of it. We were pretty naive about everything. And when I switched to college, one, because the competitiveness of the team, I went to one of the best Division I schools in the country, and the runners I was surrounded with were some of the best athletes from high school and in college. And when you get into that environment, it just becomes extremely dangerous, where as soon as you see one athlete who's a little bit skinnier than everyone else and they perform well, you're like, do I need to be skinnier? And you start questioning your body. And the big kind of awakening for me was when we had a nutritionist speak to us, and you'd think nutritionist would be a good thing, but it just opened my mind to this awareness that I'd never considered before. And it ruined a lot of the purity of the sport for me, because all of a sudden everything I was eating was now being questioned. And that's just not a good way to approach it. Fortunately, at the time I thought it was fortunate. I did not have anorexia. I did not deal with any bulimia. And those were the two eating disorders that I knew about. And those were the two things, like, as long as I'm not restricting my calories and I'm not throwing up in the shower after a meal, then I'm okay. I'm healthy.
Right.
But even from college, there was just all these issues with uncontrollable eating, where I'd have, ridiculous desserts after a meal. And it would just be a relief when I left the dining hall and I hadn't overdone it and I was away from the food all of a sudden. And it was like a celebration when that happened. But all it takes is a couple of those bad days to really put you down a downward spiral where your sleeping doesn't go as well. You feel terrible on your runs. Anytime you have to take a bathroom break during a run is not a good experience. So especially in group runs in college. But I, again, never thought it was that big of a problem. Continued to deal with it after college. I think stresses from work, probably, drinking more, and alcohol is definitely a trigger for that, where some of your inhibitions and your control get lost when you come home from a late night. And so it's just a build up, accumulation over time. And it really, in the last year, I think it picked up a little bit because I came off of that Western States experience. I didn't really have anything else going on other than just sitting at home, and I wasn't training. And the only way to occupy the day seemed to be to eat food because I was close to the kitchen. And it was just a pretty bad time. I think we talked about it a little bit, and we don't need to get into much detail here, but right before Western States, one of my best friends and like the inspiration for everything that I had done to leave my job passed away. And so that was definitely an emotional toll that I don't think I appreciated or understood for many months to come. And so there's just a lot of things coming into play. And I thought, leaving Marin and completely changing my life and just massive changes would make the difference. And it did for a little while. But once that stress of work reintroduced itself, it became a problem again. But like I said in the video, I even considered a couple of times going to see a therapist. I've been pretty skeptical and hesitant to ever do that. I certainly didn't know there was, eating disorder clinics where you could talk to folks there that were specialists in this. It was more like, okay, they're going to help with the fact that I'm in a new place, trying to make friends,
Right.
all of that. But every time I figured out an excuse to procrastinate that, and I never booked that first appointment. My brother was very encouraging about that. He was one of the few people I actually talked about it with. I probably mentioned it in passing to my parents, but in talking to them recently, they didn't realize how serious it was. But not until, I would say, February, I was reading an article where they were talking about binge eating disorder, and I was like, this is actually a diagnosed disease. I had no idea. I just thought it was me having control issues, and it was something I had always joked about with my friends, how terrible we were about this. And I joked about it on Twitter and socials and YouTube about, overeating and going on stupid Costco challenges. And I just hadn't been aware that it was a real thing. And that's when I kind of opened my eyes, and again, didn't take any action from it. Finally decided one day, you know what? I've had enough of this. This was kind of in that February timeframe where Sean O'Brien running wasn't going particularly well. I was like, I'm ready to make a change. And I booked an appointment at a clinic nearby, met with somebody, discussed my issues, and they were going to set me up with a therapist. And I think I had one final moment of hesitation where I wasn't quite ready to commit to that.
Yeah.
But right that day, I decided, okay, I'm going to give myself a week, and you're going to monitor every day. Give yourself a check or an X if you ate well that day or didn't eat well that day. And if you had more positive than negative days that week, then we'll go to the next week and try to do one better. And if there's any digression, then we would go actually book that therapist appointment. And fortunately, since then, I think because I finally made that commitment to be a little bit more aware and self-aware, that my eating has improved quite a bit. And, 3 good days of eating a week has turned into 6.5. And that's just made a massive difference for me. And everything about training, about life, about work has just gone so much better since then. And it's amazing how something that you feel like you should have so much in control of, and it's such a small part of your day. It's literally the hours of like 8 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. You can just focus for those 2 hours. It completely changes my entire life. And you can see it in my training. You can see it in my happiness, and it feels really, really good right now.
I'm really, really proud of you, man, for even just addressing it and vocalizing it publicly. It's one thing to even identify that there is something there. Mm-hmm. And for you to, like what you just said, you didn't even realize there was a problem. That is so common. It's so common for me with my anxiety, people with varying eating issues and stuff like that. It's so easy to just think it's not anything. But the second you're able to identify it or be able to put a label on it or something, it at least helps you to realize maybe there is something here and maybe I do need help and that sort of thing. I think that's wonderful, man, that you've been able to vocalize it publicly. I can't imagine it was easy to address, especially coming from someone who is an elite runner, and to any outsiders, no one would ever have assumed that, like you're fit, you're running long distances. How could anyone possibly have an eating issue? But like you said, it's far more common than anyone even realizes, especially in running and competitive running. Really proud of you, man. Really proud of you to even vocalize it. Were you able, after kind of realizing there maybe was something there, were you able to look back and identify some of the problems early on, like that you've been dealing with this for much longer than you anticipated?
Uncertain. I think I've definitely identified some triggers. So when anything happens at work that isn't perfect, or
Mm.
just things aren't going well. Or work is, I mean, it's at least a third of your day, and you think about it, it consumes a lot of your day. So if you're not happy at work, it can really mess you up. And an outlet for me for a while was I got in really good shape one year at back in San Francisco, because every single evening I was just pissed off leaving the office, and I had to go running, and I would go run 6 miles just super angry.
Yeah.
And that was the outlet that time. And another thing I touched on a little bit in the second video was this idea of exercise bulimia, which is another thing where I was like, does that mean throwing up during the runs? Because I just associated bulimia with throwing up and purging, but it actually is also just overdoing it on exercise. And I was like, wow, I do that all of the time. Like anytime you have a bad night, it's like, okay, well, I just got a bad night of sleep. I'm going to wake up earlier and try to cram in a run feeling awful. And I'm going to feel terrible at work the next day and be completely exhausted. There were definitely specific moments where I would have a terrible night, and as I'm going to sleep, I'm like, okay, tomorrow I need to do something epic. And I would force myself to run on a treadmill for 2.5 hours. And I thought I was the most badass runner for doing that, because like running on a treadmill for 2.5 hours, who does that? That's amazing.
Right.
But no, I was celebrating reinforcing a terrible behavior. So just understanding that all of these were a thing, it made a difference. So work was one. Another big area of life is women and dating.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, it's not a big part of my life in Boulder right now. I'm just having a great time getting to meet people and establish new friendships. So that's nice that it's a tertiary thing for me. But anytime that a girl doesn't text you back or message you on a dating app, you take it personally a little bit. And that happened quite a few times where I was excited about somebody. I was like, oh, this could be a potential. And one girl told me that she was in a relationship transition zone, and so she couldn't deal with it. And somebody else, I was like, oh, this could be something. And like we were messaging, and then she was like, oh wait, you live in Boulder? I'm in Denver. I'm not gonna make that work. And so, and then some was self-inflicted. Like I had a terrible, embarrassing moment where part of the dating app online now is that you have to find out stuff about people. And so I was doing a little bit of background research, and I clicked on their LinkedIn profile. And everyone knows when you click on LinkedIn, it immediately says, Chris Mocko viewed your profile. And so that ended soon after that. But and aside from that, a less serious aside from that, it really turns out that having a YouTube channel is not something good for your dating. It's like, if you type Chris M. Runner, Boulder, Colorado, like there is just a massive amount of content. So I do need to figure out a way to change the SEO. I need to do a video of like, this is Chris Mocko, and I could be a great match for you, and like kind of do like a Match.com profile. So if you want to get involved in the editing there, I think we could do something magical there.
That's the next big Ginger Runner collab right there.
That's my next big film, guys. This is the announcement here. We're making a dating video for Chris Mocko. I don't think you want to trust me with that because I have too many like really out there ideas. We could make something amazing, but it would basically is going to draw in one person that's going to be like, this is a beautiful film about this human. So let's do it. Let's do it.
Where dreams go to die too.
The behind the scenes stuff of that will be just heartbreaking. We are live. Kim, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in the chat room kind of nodding their head and sympathizing with you and recognizing that this is something that they've been living with or something that's part of their life as well. There's a lot of people in the chat room also saying, it's really difficult to stay accountable or to cook healthy for one person if you're living by yourself and you're working. So there's a lot of people just kind of sharing in what you've shared with the community. And there's a comment from Tim in the chat room as well. And Tim says, I imagine it's even harder than usual to detect this if you're running big mileage all the time. So did you find that was kind of clouding the eating issue, or like?
I had so many messages from people, and it kind of ran the gamut from, I had no idea this was a thing, I definitely deal with this, to this is amazing, I've dealt with this for a while, I've had a hard time talking to anyone about it, thank you for talking about it. So to anyone who messaged me, it's been really special to hear from the community. I'm concerned, worried. I haven't talked a lot with friends, And I know a lot of them have watched my show, so I'm uncertain if they're not comfortable talking about it. But it's amazing that complete strangers, I've had much more candid conversations than a lot of my close friends. So that's kind of bizarre that's been the case. And it's uncomfortable, like seeing people at the office who have watched the show and they're
Sure.
like, "Oh, that took a turn last week." But the thing that I've told for a couple of people who have brought up the same question is, I mean, it's night and day for me from eating enough to be fueled for runs and going over the top. Like there's very little that you couldn't be putting into your body to fuel you for your runs pre and post. But what happens is, and you should know if this has happened to you, you're just way beyond comfort. And it's just like uncomfortable eating. You're completely satiated and you're continuing to throw in food. And that's where the issue is. It's having second dinners, it's having 8 desserts, and that uncontrollable behavior is completely different from fueling correctly. So I'm very cautious about even talking about this, because now I hope people aren't thinking about, oh gosh, I got to restrict my calories. This could be overdoing it. But if this has ever happened to you, you know there's a completely different line between eating enough food and going way over the top. And if anything, you should be erring on the side of eating too much. Oh God, we just lost a beer.
Oh no!
Uh-oh.
Oh no!
Oh boy!
Save it!
Oh boy! Oh boy!
Swipe left.
That was gonna be my my treat for afterwards, and now it is gonna be on the floor. So, anyways, that's my point there. I would hate for people to now think, oh gosh, I can't have, David preaches having the burger and the pizza after the meal. And the other night I ate an entire frozen pizza, and maybe 2 weeks prior I would have been shameful for doing that because I hadn't run enough to do that. But I had ran 24 miles that day and I was starving. The furnace was burning high, and I think I portioned it out to a point where I was like, do I need another slice? And I was like, yes, I can absolutely do that. It wasn't I'm so full, I just got to do this. And so there's a different way to approach it. And Tim or anyone else, if you wanted to talk more about it, I'd be happy to. But please do not walk away from this thinking I got to restrict my calories. I'm eating too much right now.
Yeah, that's one thing that you also make a point of in your videos is talking about how it's good to eat a lot of calories when you are deep in your training, when you're logging long miles and lots of miles in a week. It is important to fuel your body, but I think what you've been dealing with, and you were upfront with this in the video, is just that level of it's not stopping when you're full. It's going beyond that and far beyond that. I would say anyone who is watching who maybe is like, oh my gosh, this is me, I need to restrict, or what Chris was just talking about, don't hesitate to reach out to any sort of food issue center or professional. They will absolutely be able to guide you in the right direction. I don't want to forget to mention that.
Right. Or even friends or family. Like a lot of people, when it comes to any sort of eating or food disorder, they're ashamed or they feel guilty or embarrassed. And there's lots of outlets to help you with that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so.
and we're big advocates of mental health on the show. Obviously, I've been really open with my dealing with anxiety over the last year, and talking to professionals is a huge benefit. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to professionals who can help you through situations, eating disorders, mental things. It can absolutely help guide you in the right direction, if only to help you hear that you're not alone. So anytime we have conversations like this on the show, I definitely want to make sure that people know that there are professionals, there are others out there dealing with the same issues as you, and talking to professionals can only help. It is only a benefit. I know there's a stigma. Screw that. Like, help is important. What are some things that
Ethan, on that front, like, I think one of the reasons that I felt comfortable at all speaking about this is because you have been so open, and there's, I hope there's other examples, but honestly, I either was listening to one of your podcasts or was watching I was just stalking YouTube. I was watching a lot of Ginger Runner, catching up a lot of repeats, and I'm like, it is amazingly refreshing, and I respect him so much. It's so hard to do it, and you would think, oh man, I'm so embarrassed for Ethan that he's talking about this, but no, I feel so much more respect for you having spoken up, and because I reacted in that way, I think that helped me feel more comfortable in speaking. So thank you for opening up the conversation.
Of course. I mean, it's the same for me. The only reason I was comfortable talking about it was either I was talking about it with friends and was like the first time I was talking about it. I know Kim also has helped me talk about it publicly, but just talking to friends helped me realize I'm not alone. Holy crap. There are other people that, like, I would mention something that occurred to me or happened to me, and someone would go, oh my, dude, the same thing happened to me. And all of a sudden, the world opened up because I thought I was dealing with very specific nuances that no one could identify with. And I was the one with the problem, and I needed to figure it out. And that is the alienating thing with mental health, is that people think that their problem is the only problem. It is so unique just to them. The reality is it's not. There are lots of people that deal with it at varying degrees. And like you coming out and talking about your struggle that you're going through, I, like you just said, you probably got a number of messages. I'm assuming you got reached out by countless people. Yeah?
Yeah.
And it's awesome. It's awesome because you are helping others, and I think it's probably helping you, and it will continue to do so. Before we're going to move into the post show, because I know that we only have Chris for a certain amount of time because he has beer on the floor he has to clean. But I do want to just talk a little bit about what are some things that you are currently dealing with that or doing to help control this. Like, what are some of your here's what I am doing now to help combat this?
Yes, I talked a little bit in my kind of follow-up video, but I mean, the big things for me, and again, this is a hard thing to admit that you need to do, because it's like, how do I not have the self-control to do this on my own? But restricting a lot of the temptations and eliminating them from my house has made a pretty big difference. So, you know, I used to have a hard time with cereal. I eat 4 bowls of cereal. I just got to get rid of that. And if I really want a bowl of cereal, maybe I know New York has like cereal bars where you can get cereal, but
right.
Like, I think the difference is, instead of having a pint or a quart of ice cream in my fridge, I go to Ben and Jerry's, walk down the street, and get a cup from there, so that somebody else is controlling the portion. And, you know, you're enjoying that experience. It's probably more delicious because, you know, there's so many other elements to that as opposed to eating it on your couch. But I've just had to eliminate all that. All the sweets, all the chips, all that stuff is gone from my apartment. And I think that's a good starting place. I still occasionally will have a treat or two. And sometimes I have a little bit more than I should have, but it's good to have a little bit in your life. I don't want to be completely restrictive, because on the opposite side, if you're too extreme, the opposite problem could happen, where I would restrict breakfast, have a very healthy lunch, and then the problem would happen at dinner because you've restricted all day. Now, like, my favorite days of the week at the office are Mondays, when I have scones and croissants, and Fridays, where we have the most delicious if anyone's in town for a Friday in Boulder, I will invite you to. I'm inviting you to my office, because we have this bacon that is just like, it's not strips, it's just chunks of lard and fat. And I apologize for any vegetarians or fans of pigs. If any babe fans. Or
I'm a big fan of pigs.
We're big Babe Pig in the City fans. The sequel.
Yeah, it was amazing. But I actually think part of my improvements in my long run is because I have this amazing bacon the day before. So that's one thing. 2, and this is probably the bigger thing, is that I had to identify when the issue was the most, and it is immediately after dinner and immediately when I get home from work. So those are the 2 periods where, as soon as you're done eating, before like the fullness has kind of hit you, you immediately go back for more. And so it's more awareness of just like spacing out the meal and taking a pause after the meal. I also have the advantage, I have a pair of Normatec massage boots. And when you're going in those boots, you can't really move at all. You're stuck there for a while.
Right.
So regardless of what I want to do, it naturally adds a barrier of 40 minutes. And by the time that happens, probably like still very often, minute 20, I'm like, oh man, I'm ready for a second helping, or I'm going to have some really good dessert. And by the time it finishes and I go to clean up the dishes, I'm like, I don't really need that anymore. I'm just going to go to sleep. And having that awareness, but also that break, it definitely helps. And then the other part, which is definitely the harder part, is right when I get home from work, where you're just completely drained. You probably have all these caffeine and stimulus from the day at the work, staring at a computer screen, and all I want to do is just veg out on the couch, you know, unzip the shirt a little bit, and just veg out. And you know, I get home earlier. I start my days earlier, so I actually have a lot more time at home. So that can be very dangerous. And so one thing that I've done that's helped a lot is just build a little routine for myself. So typically it used to be going for secondary runs. I've basically gotten rid of that completely. And it's made my runs a lot better. But instead, I do a little bit of core work. So I get a little bit of a workout in. I do some stretching and the rolling, like I mentioned. And just tonight was really the first night I also went to the pool and relaxed there a little bit. And I was like, wow, that's a much better way to spend my first hour at home than immediately eating some junk and making nachos at 4:45. Why am I doing that?
Right.
So that helps. And then 3 is, spending more time with friends. I think there's this pressure to, okay, I get home from work, I got to get home so I can start resting and recovering and get to bed early. But it turns out you can spend 2 hours socializing, having dinner out with folks, and still make it in bed at a reasonable hour. So being aware that some nights might be longer, if I have a key workout, maybe that's not the night to be out late, but having more times with friends. I've started running with more groups here, which has helped a lot. There's always this pressure, like every run has to be perfect, or if I'm feeling bad, I got to do it on my own. And having, like, bringing the joy back and not stressing about that as much has helped on that side of things as well. So I think those are the big areas for me. So I think I assume that other folks deal with similar stuff, but identifying what those triggers might be and working on them helps. And talking to other people is obviously the first step. And I thought it was going to be incredibly hard to talk to my parents about it. And I always stress about telling them anything that is negative or troubling about me, because I'm like, they don't need to be worrying right now. They have their own things that they're dealing with. And I just don't want them stressing at any point. And it's incredibly hypocritical of me, because every time that they have something going on, I'm like, why didn't you tell me immediately after they wait? They're like, we didn't want you to stress. I'm like, that's different for me. I'm young, I can handle it. And so telling them, talking to some friends was a really important first step, and it is not easy. But it turns out once you begin talking about it, it's not nearly as bad as you think it's going to be. And if you can't do it with friends, find a therapist. And I feel bad preaching that, because I've had a little bit of trouble doing that yet. But I do think that's pretty powerful and meaningful to have an expert who has dealt with this many times before.
Completely. Chris, I totally appreciate your openness. Did you have something?
I just wanted to read this one comment. I thought it was kind of important to share this. Sam Berg in the chat room says, "Hey man, it's awesome to hear that this is something you are able to address, because it's helped show me that there is a community. I was an OHL hockey player who suffered from bulimia and exercise bulimia. So thank you, and I hope you know that there is a community here. You are not alone. Thank you for helping to show me that I'm not either. It's nice to know that there are other elite athletes suffering from the same sort of thing." So I think this is part of the reason why it's really important to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not easy to, again, you're a public figure. It's not easy to just blurt it out. So I imagine it took some time, some thought, and effort to put that video together, and the follow-up video. I think you're only going to get positivity from it. I am so proud of you, Chris, for talking about it. And I can't wait to see how it helps. I can't wait to see what's next for you racing-wise, and just to see how that unfolds. Do you have anything on the radar? I know your Ultra sign-up says you're signed up for a couple races. Is Quad Rock going to be one of those?
Yeah, so the really difficult thing about our sport is you want to compare yourself to others and measure yourself against others.
Of course.
And
yeah.
There are a couple folks in this sport, Courtney included, that are pretty untouchable, that I may never be able, even on my best day, I may never be able to compete with them. A lot of them have first names that are 3 letters long and end in "im," and they live in Flagstaff.
I thought he was talking about Kim Tashima Newberry.
Oh.
Flagstaff, yeah.
You know we don't live in Flagstaff, right?
So Kim, Jim, and Tim are the kind of, yeah. So that's a hard thing to deal with when you're competing at a competitive level. Like, there are people on the starting line that I may never be able to beat, and you cannot measure yourself against them. You just have to be happy with your own performance. And if everyone has the best day ever, you may finish 10th in the race and be happier than if you had won it. That being said, I obviously, every race I run in, I'd love to be competitive and have a chance to win. But again, I can be very excited about a 3rd place finish, especially given how the last couple of races have gone. basically just showing up at the line, feeling confident and fit is going to be a huge step for me. And that's going to be a win right there. But I do have some pretty big goals for the year. And David Roach definitely emphasizes that, racing is just part of it. And it's a celebration of all your training. And for now, right now, I thought about racing last weekend. I was like, you know what? I had an amazing long run. That was pretty satisfying. I didn't have to deal with waking up at 4 a.m. and traveling 4 hours to get to a race. And it's been pretty tough dealing with the disappointment of not making it to Western States, because that was the reason I got into ultra running. And it's a huge part of it. And if anyone has a bid that they want to give to me, I would be happy to run for you. But yeah, the focus is going to be, and again, it's still very far out there, so things could change. And I'm trying to just think about, 2 weeks out, 4 weeks out, and not get ahead of myself. But I would really like to put an amazing performance together at Leadville. I'm in Colorado. I'm trying to run local. I feel like that's #run local. And I've always wanted to race Leadville. Hard Rock is probably pretty interesting too. Even UTMB have never really been real possibilities for me, because I've had a huge aversion to altitude. And now I'd be lying if I said part of moving to Boulder was to conquer my fears of altitude. And I just feel a lot more confident running out here now. And I think 10,000 feet is going to be a completely different beast, but having this base and being that close to be able to go train there is going to make a huge difference. So we have a huge contingent of Boulder folks, almost all coached by David. And we're going to be showing up and doing some big things at Leadville. And then after that, who knows? I have a feeling the North Face 50 is going to be monstrous again this year.
Sweet.
But another tough thing for me is there's only 6 or 7 races a year that are highly publicized, big deals in our sport. And, it's probably way too cool. Lake Sonoma, maybe throw in, what's up in Washington?
GRVR. Yeah, it's called GRVR.
Yeah, GRVR. And then States, UTMB, and the North Face. And that's pretty much it. And I feel badly because, Leadville is a darn hard race. And I think it's lost a lot of the attention that it used to have. And for me, I think I put a lot of pressure on showing up to these big races where there is attention. It's who cares about that? I should just be enjoying the sport and picking the races that I'm excited about, as opposed to forcing these things. And so that's the way I'm approaching it. And the North Face is an amazing race. I'd love to go back to Marin, so that would be great. But maybe I'll do something crazy in Europe. Who knows? So we're trying to keep things open at the moment. But that's where we are now. But GRVR, it's probably hard to see, but I have this on my fridge and I look at it every day, and I kind of look at it shamefully because I completely botched GRVR 2017. I think
we know
that.
we didn't get the results from one Chris Mocko.
I'm shocked that you're talking to me. I thought you were gonna ghost me forever because I am so guilty
we need
about.
To ghost him forever.
We do need to ghost him.
So whatever sort of endorsement I can do this year, if you want me to be I'll do some YouTube content. We can do some video promotions in advance. We can auction off. I still have. This could be a good item for GRVO.
Oh, no.
Unwashed in a drawer in my apartment is the underwear that I wore at Western States 2016 and 2017. So if you wanted to use those as prizes, I could autograph them, do whatever you want, but they're already signature. They're already Chris Mocko's signature.
There's a part of me that's like, oh man, this is Chris just joking with us. There's the other part of me that's going, no, Chris has a
dirty
drawer
underwear in the drawer.
These are like successful race goes in the successful race undies drawer.
So some people keep medals or bibs, but I'm a fan of keeping underwear.
This worked well for me from mile 1 to 75, then an accident, then 76 through 100. We will not be auctioning those off for GRVR, but I appreciate the offer. But we will. Well, I would love to talk to you about doing something fun, video wise. We'll come up with something pretty cool. Maybe it'll involve a little bit of traveling or something like that. On one of our ends, doing something fun. Listen, Chris, it is a pleasure to have you back on the show. It is awesome to see your channel continue to grow, and you do just really good things with the format. Can you let people know where they can find your videos, where they can find you on social media? If they have additional questions or want to reach out, where can they do so?
Yeah. So youtube.com/the Mocko Show is where you can find the YouTube content. I feel like it's a broken record to say this, but subscribing to the channel makes a big difference for me. That's the only number that I track, and it's fun to see that go up. You get notified, so you actually get to see when new content releases. I will get equally depressed when you unsubscribe after you get the stupid notification. But I mean, it's challenging to put out content right now, and it's hard to look bigger picture at YouTube channels with 100K subscribers and more. It's amazing, but it takes a lot of discipline, consistency, and putting out content again and again. And for me, it's like I'm putting in quite a bit of effort to make a video that's only seen by a couple thousand people.
Right.
But when you get a chance to see the comments and the engagement of the people who are watching it, it makes it totally worth it. So it was very hard to do that content when I was kind of in that bad state, and it would have been very difficult to film and record any of that. And I'm grateful that I'm out of that period now. So hopefully this is going to come back for a while now. But I do feel like it's a good opportunity to speak to a community. It challenges me creatively. It's hard to have content week after week, and some of them are going to be misses. Putting yourself out there all the time, getting those thumbs down is never easy, but every time it gets a little bit easier. And someday maybe I'll figure out how to, edit it correctly and do a transition that isn't a star wipe. But yeah, YouTube's the best way. And then I work at this small social media company now that you have 280 characters to kind of express your opinions, and it's called Twitter. If you want to reach me there, that's the best place for messaging me directly. I'm on there fairly frequently now. It's nice to have it be part of your job to check it. So you're like, oh, sorry, I got to check this. It's my job. So I've gotten a lot of messages from there. I think that's probably the best place to do it. And yeah, I will absolutely reply to every single one of you. So feel free to message away, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible.
Do it, people. Reach out to Chris. He's super receptive and just a fun person to follow. And subscribe to his channel. As you're watching this on YouTube, it's a pretty easy thing to do. Just go over to youtube.com/The Mocko Show. Give him a sub and click the notification button too. We know the YouTube game. It is not easy, and YouTube does not make it easy for small creators. And we are both small creators. You wouldn't think so with the number of subs, ours combined. But the reality is we're not the Logan Pauls, Jake Pauls, Casey Neistat's of the world. We are not, and YouTube does not appreciate us, but we'll continue to make content no matter what. I'm really proud of you, man.
Long tail, baby.
Yeah,
long tail, baby.
Long tail. Thank you guys very much for tuning into tonight's Ginger Runner Live, episode number 208. What were you gonna say?
208 is what I was going to say.
We're going to move into the post show with Chris Mocko. We're going to hold him just a little bit longer so we can answer all those questions that didn't get asked during the main show with Chris. If you would like to join our post show, it's very easy to do. You just have to go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner for as little as $1 a month. That's it. It supports the channel. It's really easy to do. It's a fraction of a latte each month, and you get to participate in every single post show that we do with our guests every Monday. So we encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, we'll see you in just a couple of seconds in the post show with Mr. Chris Mocko. Am I forgetting anything?
I think that's it.
I think that is it.
I'm going to promise to reveal the hair products I use today if you stay in for the post show. So
that's even better. Now we have like a surprise promise. Chris Mocko's going to share his hair care products with us in the post show. My voice
What are your hair care products?
No showering.
And a hat.
And a hat.
All right.
That's the easiest hair care. Thank you, everybody. If you haven't subscribed, click the notification bell and get out there, train hard, race harder, party the hardest.
I know I am.
Hey, that's my line. Thanks, everyone. See you next week. Bye. Ginger Rock.